Muy buenas noches. Es un gran honor para mí presentar a este panel y esta exhibición llamada Poéticas Subversivas. Vengo en nombre de Atractor Studio y tengo pues una gran felicidad y un gran honor de presentar una lista de artistas increíbles de todas partes del mundo y en particular esta noche de presentar este panel en el que Angélica Cocoma como moderadora va a estar hablando con Ana María Montenegro, con Aarati Akkapeddi, con Adrien Segal y con Amor Muñoz. Y en nombre de Atractor, quiero darle las gracias a todas y todos por estar viendo la exhibición, por recorrerla y por estar esta noche con nosotros. Entonces, adelante, Angélica, y muchas gracias por este panel.
Gracias a ti, Juan. Thank you, Juan. I'm going to switch to English now. And I'm also very happy to be here with you, all of you amazing artists. And I'm very excited to see how the discussion is going to go. I looked at your work and I think it's very interesting and inspiring precisely in this context that we are living in. So I will start by giving you some minutes to introduce yourselves and to tell us a bit more about your work. So first, we're going to start with Aarati Akkapeddi, and then we will follow with Amor Muñoz, Adrien Segal, and Ana María Montenegro. So please, Aarati, you have the floor and you can share us your presentation.
Thanks for having me. Let me just pull up my slides here. Hello, my name is Aarati Akkapeddi. I'm an artist, programmer, and educator. I'm based in Lenape-Hoking, otherwise known as New York City. And I think actually in the interest of time, I'm gonna skip through my text introduction here and just jump right into some work. So the work that I have up in the exhibition is called Encoding. It's a multi-layered archive of family photographs and their corresponding facial recognition data and reinterpreted as topographic maps. My process looked like this. I started with family photos and ran them through a facial recognition model. The facial recognition model works by assigning a vector or a list of numbers to a face that it sees. And if it sees similar faces or faces of the same person, that number is close enough that it can deduce that it's the same person. But for me, I was really interested in what it means to have someone's face, and particularly someone that you care about, like a family member, have this set of numbers attached to it. And so I wanted to reinterpret those numbers into something new. And I kind of grouped those numbers by 3 and used them as XYZ values to create a contour plot, and then looked at it from the top view and ended up with a sort of family album of sorts, showing those topographic maps and biometric data and corresponding photographs. A project that grew out of that also worked with facial recognition data, but I was interested in looking at columns or mukulu or rangoli, depending on the language, but they are these patterns that are drawn in South Asia, outside of the home, to kind of bring in good energy. But I'm really drawn to them because it's something I grew up seeing, but also they are quite mathematical in structure. And so I kind of worked in a similar way where I was working with the facial recognition data, but instead of translating it into topographic maps, I was translating it into these column patterns. And I ended up creating cyanotype prints of the original images and embossing the corresponding facial recognition column on top. And you can see a detail shot here. I've also been working with the columns with text as opposed to images. So translating the characters of the text into binary and then those into columns as well in this spiralized pattern. On the left here, you see 4 columns that have messages encrypted in them. which happened to be birthdays of my paternal grandmother, my maternal grandmother, my mother, and myself, going clockwise, starting from the top left. And then the last work that I'll show is more recently, I've been working in a different way with generative adversarial networks. So machine learning models that you can kind of train on a set of images, and it'll be able to create its own images. And so I've been training GANs, these models on my own family photographs, as well as archival photographs from studies in Tamil Studio Archives and Society. But the goal is to only use my family photographs in the future. But what you end up with are really interesting. It's kind of both familiar and unfamiliar images where you kind of recognize, portraits of couples, different family members, but it's, unfamiliar at the same time. And I ended up using the generated images to create negatives to print on expired photo paper. So kind of returning the process back to the original medium of the photos. And I've created about 35 photographs. But yeah, this is kind of where my head is at right now in terms of my work. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited.
Thank you, Aarati, and thank you for being on time with your presentation. Now we will follow with Amor Muñoz, please.
Hello, hi. Thank you for this invitation. I'm happy to be here with you sharing. And I just have a question. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start with this. My work explores the relationship between technology and society, and in particular, how technology affects fabrication systems and how manual labor and handicrafts are changing in a contemporary global economy. For a long time ago, I had been working with traditional textile techniques such as weaving and embroidering with experimental electronics. Part of my work is focused on social and participatory projects. My intention has been to create little utopias and recreate social phenomena. In my work, the figures of the artisan and the worker are very important. But for example, in my project, Maquila Region 4, I seek to make visible the situation of workers, especially women who work in the factories in the north border of Mexico, United States. Maquila Region 4, it's a performative intervention in the labor landscape of marginal areas of Mexico. This mobile factory manufactures electronic textiles and pays the American minimum wage. You should know that Mexican wage is just the 8% of the American. The salary difference is terrible, and for that reason, American companies manufacture on the Mexican border. So Maquila Region 4, the people sign a contract to work in the production of functional electronic circuits using conductive thread and receive a fair way. So we can see here some of the products, and when the product is done, we attach a BD code to make visible the part that we always forget in the production systems. When we buy products, we always think about the brand, about the materials, about the design, but we never think about the hands, the person that manufactured that product. So you decode that BD code and you find the photograph of the worker, how many hours it work, and how many money received for the work. So that kind of projects are very important for me now. So I will stop to share this. And we will continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Amor. Now, Adrien, if you want to share us a bit about your work.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So my work tends to start with a very personal experience in a natural landscape in which I become interested in investigating the natural forces at that site. This is near where I live in San Francisco, California. And at this site, the tides are a very predominant feature of the landscape. And I'm very interested in looking at how our society focuses on science and technology to reduce these massive forces in the landscape into numeric quantities in measurements. And we're doing this with so much of the different things in our society in general. And when you take the tides and reduce them down to raw data, this is what one day of tide data looks like. And then it can be built back up into different forms of visualization. So this is the same data represented in a 24-hour period showing the 2 highs and the 2 lows at San Francisco. So if you know about the tides, they're based on the gravitational pull of the moon in relation to the sun. So one full cycle of tides is a month. And if you take a whole month of tide data and layer it, this is the image you get.
Un mes de datos y los sobreponemos.
And this is my work. So I'm
Esta es la imagen.
I take the information and I try to represent it
Tomo la información
that is visible to the body and also interactive. The body can walk around the piece and experience those patterns in a new, unexpected
Así podemos
way.
experimentar esos patrones.
There you can see some other views of the piece. So I'm very interested in how we take data and turn it into information, and then where we can try and turn that data and information into knowledge and gain. Is that me? I'm also interested in objectivity and the idea that humans must remove their emotional reaction and their emotional connection to nature in order to study it. I believe that we must acknowledge humans are emotional creatures to be able to turn that information we are collecting from data into knowledge. And I believe that art is a wonderful vessel for us to experience these ideas and to turn them into knowledge, both through the making of art and through the experiencing of it. So we need to stop thinking about artworks as objects and start thinking about them as triggers for experience. The piece that was included in the exhibition is this image here. It's looking at water rights and the system of water allocation specific to California and how we as a society choose who gets the right to use water and what the most important uses are, which is very questionable and complicated system here, which I won't get too into. But the piece itself is sourcing data from water permits for water users in California. The different entity that's allowed to use the water is represented in different colors of ball chain that are hung from this meandering river. And the length of each strand relates to how much water that particular permitted user is allowed to use. So the piece is installed in an atrium above 2 stairways, and the installation is translated into the wonderful digital experience that Attractor Studio put together. So thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Adrien. Now we will finish with Ana Maria.
Okay.
Vamos a terminar con la
I don't know if this is happening only to me, but sometimes I'm listening to the live translation. Is that only happening to me?
No, I'm also hearing it.
Okay.
Yes, I don't know if we could take care of that because it's a bit distracting, I feel.
Okay, I'm just gonna get going. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super honored being here with all of you. And so I'm from Bogota, Colombia. I'm gonna just scroll here really fast to see just an overview of the kind of work that I do. I do a lot of installation and video and performance, and also a lot of web-based art, which is the piece that I want to focus on in these 3 minutes that I have, because it's in Spanish and it's a bit difficult to understand if you're a non-Spanish speaker. So the piece that I am presenting in this show is called ¿Quiénes son? Or Who Are They? And it's a website, basically. It's a website that was part of a solo exhibition that I had here in Bogota. But how does this work? Basically, as some of you might know, we are in a very critical, to put it very lightly, situation in Colombia, because there's an ongoing genocide for many years now of social leaders, both social leaders and ex-guerrilla fighters, ex-guerrillas. And the numbers are staggering, and they've been growing and growing and growing. The whole show was about this, basically, and how this has been happening throughout our history here in Colombia. But what this particular piece does is that here in Colombia, we have this mechanism called derecho de petición, which is like a right to petition. This was something that was established after the 1991 Constitution. And what this law permits is that if you as a citizen send a letter to any public office, they have, with a question, with a petition of information, they have to respond to you in the next 10 to 15 days, depending on the kind of request that you make. So this forces authorities and the state and public office in general to give transparent information to the citizens every time they request it. So basically what this does is that it's like a generator for these petitions. And the petition asks for, the petition is addressed to a unit of the state, I forgot how to say that, prosecutor's office, that it's in charge of investigating these crimes of social leaders, human rights activists, ex-guerrillas after the peace process that we had in 2016, etc. So what, if you as a user come in here, you can here put your name, your ID number, the place where you live, and this will create a petition and will send it automatically to the prosecutor's office, asking 3 questions. What are these 3 questions here? Which is, if there is an ongoing investigation to determine the intellectual author of the murder of, and here we have the name of this social leader, the date when it happened, and the place where it took place. So the system is taking data from a database that we, with some organizations, ONGs, gathered of all these killings. So every time someone comes in, this name, this date, and this place where the murder happened, where the murder happened, is automatically filled, and it asks the prosecutor's office and the police and the government for if there is an investigation for this crime, why did they commit this crime, if they know, and what kind of actions has this special unit that was created during the peace process to fight these kind of crimes, what actions are they taking, they are doing in order to make these crimes stop, basically. And here you have the list of all the people. And if it's in light gray, these are the ones that have been sent. And these are the ones, this would be the next name if you come in after me. And then you can just send the petition here. And this automatically sends, if you have filled everything correctly, the petition to the government and the prosecutor's office and this special unit that is supposedly doing this job. So the list, and this was launched in June. It has a list of the social leaders and the ex-guerrilla members since the first day, since we signed the peace process till March of 2020, because the process of verifying these names and dates and places is very strict. So here you're not even seeing the names of, April 2020 till this date, these numbers have grown up. Here you have here we have 442 names of social leaders and 221 names of ex-guerrilla members. So basically this list has been gone over at least 6 times. So, thousands of emails have been sent, and the government has had to reply to each one of those individually, because we use the email of each person, the ID of each person. So it's basically as if each person was, sending a letter by itself. So yeah, basically, I wanted to explain this because if you don't speak Spanish, it's very complicated to understand, and it's very specific of the Colombian context right now. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ana Maria. I think that you explained it very well, a very complex and juridical mechanism in 4 minutes. So thank you. And well, now I wanted to ask you a question that I prepared, because I feel that your works, all of them, have a common element of pointing out how we're living in a society with inequality of access to resources, with different forms of oppression due to capitalism, due to war, and due to colonialism and different forms of oppressions. But still, I feel that all of your work offers like an opening or something that is uplifting for me, in the sense that it proposes a way to make visible some identities or reaffirm identities that might be diluted by contemporary forms of technology. And I would like to ask you about in which way do you think that your work does this, in which way your work could reaffirm subalterns or could reaffirm identities, because I feel that it's really uplifting to think about how art can help us to, think in new ways to represent each other and to try to challenge and resist these forms of oppression that we live in, that we are living in. So I hope that I made myself clear, and I would like to start with Aarati. We can follow the same order as before. So if Aarati, if it's okay with you, you can start.
Sure. So it's kind of funny because I think in some of my work I'm almost appropriating surveillance technology, with the facial recognition data. But for me, I think I want to do so in a way that gives space for intimacy, especially when I'm doing so alongside more personal artifacts, and just in general thinking about like how different forms of data and how they affect our memory and our understandings of ourselves. And I guess also with the column pieces that I showed, in that work, I was thinking about columns as code. So thinking about like these non-Western or traditional knowledge systems as technologies in and of themselves. That's something that's important to me. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think technology has been conceived as something universal, standard, and objective. Technology exists all over the world. The history of technology is not made only of sophisticated innovations created in the rich countries. In developing countries, there is a parallel history of technologies written daily, made of alternative uses and creative contributions of techniques and artifacts. So through time, technologies appears, disappears, transform, die, combine with each other. Everywhere the new coexists with the old, and the advance with the traditional. For me, it's very important to talk about tecnodiversity, to imagine other futures and alternative applications of technology. For me, appropriate technology is a good key to talking about identity and technology. Since 2014, I have created a series of community laboratories for appropriate technology with different groups of indigenous artisans, women. The idea is to have a space to share and create, to share traditional and ancestral knowledge and access to technological knowledge. In these laboratories, the participants imagine their own technologies with identity and make applications using local materials, traditional techniques with electronics. It's impossible to cancel the technology from our lives, and this could be a threat to identity and tradition, but this space, this kind of laboratories, I have observed that when people make their own technologies with their context, an emotional connection is generated between technology and user. So yes, it's very important that we shape our technologies and not that technology shape us. So I think the problem is not the technology in itself. The problem is the people and governments that use technology to control and oppress us. I believe that today is very important to create strong communities to create and share knowledge together to empower ourselves and create independent platforms for resistance and reporting. As an artist, I seek to create strategies to make visible inequalities and forms of oppression. So before I explained this example, the Maquila Region 4 projects. So yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Amor. I wanted to say something kind of bouncing off what you said is the idea that technology is only new and only digital is a misnomer. I think the root of the word technology, techne, also shares the root of craft. And I think it's a really important root grounding to acknowledge that technology encompasses much more than what we think of in contemporary society. I really like the idea that we are harnessing something that's usually used to oppress or to commodify or to quantify in unexpected new ways. I think artists are really great at looking at the world around us and making moves to question how the systems that we live in are set up, and to question other ways that we might harness those systems and shift them towards something that is a better way to live, I guess, and also has more meaning for people in their lives. So to answer your question, Angélica, our prompt for this part is, I guess my work is less about identity as it is about looking at natural systems and trying to think about them outside of the context of resources, and only thinking about nature as something that we can take from. And I believe that science and the obsession with quantifying everything, and technology and the obsession of turning everything in our lives into these raw data, these bits of information that get passed around. It's about building something out of that reduction that has more meaning to me personally as an emotional human being. And through that process, hopefully expressing something that other people can relate to from their own histories and perspectives and personal experiences, and really through their bodies as well, because I think most of us now, we're so disembodied in the experience of particularly through COVID and being remote and only interacting through a screen, really about getting back into the physical sensations in the body as part of a more wholesome and experiential way to live.
Thanks. So, well, I agree with that. I guess I would just build on top of many of the things that you've said. I think that for me, probably one of the key words for this question would be visibility, at least in Colombia. In Colombia, I mean, technology and internet and all of these tools has provided a degree of visibility that I think is really important. And I can think of some specific cases here in Colombia where you know, technology and the way artists have used it has really mobilized people in public space, for instance, right? So I think all of that is important, and for artists, the Colombian artists, at least that, you know, we live in the cities and with internet access, you know, and many privileges, this question of visibility becomes really important, because I do think that it's a responsibility, at least, well, here and in the situation that we are right now, of giving visibility to artists that are not in these centers. And I think that internet has, and you know, technology in general, blah, blah, has played a very important role in that, with other regions of the country that, yeah, that are not as privileged. And yeah, that, and then I would also, but I do think that it's a tricky question, because I agree that there are many kinds of technologies, and technology per se is not a bad thing, of course, and technology is in our lives to stay, all of that. What my main concern always with this question is the illusion of connection. The illusion of connection, like, because we all do feel that we are more connected, but at the same time we are more disconnected. Yeah? So I think that that's a problem, but I do think that it's a problem that we have to inhabit as artists. Like, that's precisely the problem where we can make work. This problem of, you know, connectivity and being connected, and at the same time being isolated. And on the other hand, organizing this conversation, for instance, before the pandemic would have been probably impossible, right? So, but at the same time, we're not in a space where we can actually talk to each other, right? Because I'm sure we would really enjoy, you know, we have a lot of things to talk about, us here. So it's tricky. It's tricky. I think it's a tricky question, but I think that that's the problems. Those are the problems that make our work in a way. So it's just a matter of inhabiting them as best as we can. Yeah.
Thank you, Ana Maria. And I think that your work, all of your work, like gives us, or at least exposes a different way to connect with each other, in the sense that I do feel that in all of your work, with, for instance, with the photographs of the family members of Aarati and her proposal to use column as a way of appropriating like these codes, or these like this way in which technology can rip off the emotion and the intimacy of people, is a way of reappropriating technology and giving it a new sense of meaning and a new sense of intimacy. And I feel that also with your work with the derecho de petición, with your proposal of asking the government to investigate what is happening to the social leaders, just by using something that we could feel is like a form or as a web page, and naming people that is not being named, and just like that act of protest is a way of appropriating something that can be seen as simple for some people. And I feel that also in your work, Amor and Adrien, you show us how you can think of new ways of using technology to protest and to, I think it's very, very uplifting, really, because when you feel, or it's also like a tricky question, as Ana Maria was saying, because in a sense you're trying to reappropriate some uses of technology in the best way you can, but this is still very dependent of the context, and other people are still reappropriating technology for some uses that we don't feel so comfortable with, or that can be used to oppress other and to make inequality even more acute. So, but still, I do feel that you as artists are showing us some ways or some new forms of imagining different uses of something that is very, of using something as technology that is something that is permeating our lives, whether we like it or not. It's permeating the way we relate to each other, the way we move around the world, it's permeating the way we consume items, the way we study nature and everything. So I think that's very uplifting from your work, trying to find these new uses or making visible things that technology sometimes obscures. So technology, when it's used by governments, for instance, to silence, or when it's used by a political economy that benefits from some things being unsaid. And just saying it and putting it on the picture, I'm thinking more about your work, that for me is like a clear denounce to how a capitalist system uses some labor forces to trying to alienate some people, but in a way, when you're making that explicit, you also have an accountability as a consumer. And so, well, I just wanted to make this comment, but I wanted to see briefly if someone had, okay, no, we don't have questions. Great. And Adrien, so I'm just going to say another thing, that I really like what you said about emotion and how technology can be used to rip off emotion from nature and from us as human beings, and try to simplify something that is quite complex as nature in itself. So I feel that when your work, or all of your works, are putting like this new sense of meaning or emotional like charge in your art, like you are counteracting it, like you're resisting to that attempt of technology of ripping up, you know, like all of the complexities that are in ourselves as human beings. And I think that's amazing, and it's very inspiring. Well, yeah, I think that's something that really caught my interest about your work. I don't know if you want to comment on something that I said or something that one of the other participants said before we close. We have still like 5 minutes, so I will open the mic to anyone who wants to share something.
I'd just like to say that, just to bounce off what you were saying about bringing back both an emotion, but just the visibility. I think that they're very strong threads shared between all of our works. And I'm so grateful to have met and been introduced to your work this way, because I'm incredibly inspired by what I've seen just in such a short time. But that giving a face to something, to give that attention and focus to an identity or to something that's very important to all of you, and the visibility that artists can bring to a very important issue, or to something they care about, or to something that needs to change for the better, I think is the power that we have as artists. And I am just so grateful that other people are dedicating their lives to this very difficult but personally gratifying practice, and taking the time to share it. So thank you all for bringing yourselves and sharing your work.
Thank you, Adrien. I wanted to pose a question that we have from the audience. We just received it, so I'm going to read it out loud. So an anonymous spectator asks you, where do you think the value to a highly technified society lies on doing research and artistic work around the connection between environment and technology? I don't know if someone wants to answer it. Yeah. You can't see the question, right, in the chat? You can see it. Okay, so if someone wants to answer it, if not, it's okay.
I think the thing is that, my work is not related directly to that issue, right? So it's, I think it's, super valuable, but I don't think I have the tools in my own experience to explain why exactly. I think it's something more that, your other artists could do better.
I think it's kind of a catch-22, or a paradox, right? So technology, easy access to open data, easy, like Ana Maria's work, you're economizing this systematic approach to asking the government to be accountable by making it easier for people to tell them to be accountable through those forms that they fill out. And it's much easier than if they had to handwrite that or do it themselves, right? So you're utilizing technology as a way to ask those questions. And I think that's the catch-22, is we both each of us in our own ways uses technology in our work, either through research or through design, programming, whatever, I sometimes use digital fabrication. So we're both utilizing these new technologies at the same time that we're questioning them. And I think that's a really important duality, that you know, the answer is not to reject all technology because it's going to happen no matter what. So that kind of speaks to this highly technified society that we live in, but to question how we're using it, and if it's a good or bad, or how do we make the judgment on how technology is being used as a society.
I think also making, oh, sorry, Amor, what were you going to say? I was going to say, I think also making visible the larger systems around the technologies we use, like thinking about Amor's work actually, and the labor that goes into production. And with what I'm doing, I think a lot about data labor and like how it's, I think, very intentionally obscured. Training data sets aren't, you know, there's a lot of actual like human labor that goes into finding data, processing it, and also where it's stored. Like there is no such thing as the cloud. It's a computer. It's a physical server somewhere. It's using up energy. Yeah.
And we're living now very crazy times, right? The very complicated crisis related with, yes, with climate change. Can be climatical, the environment crisis, and yes, the technology will not disappear, but it's important to be conscious of diversity and the possibilities that we have to try to change and apply in different ways the technology. Now we can see amazing projects about biodesign, a lot of people working with organic stuff, using ancestral techniques and technology at the same time. And there are very interesting things that we have in view, and we will see what's coming on with virus. Coronavirus is like a recordatorio, a remind, no, yeah, of we should to change things.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to thank you all for being here, for being present. We're going to begin closing this space. I think this was a very great discussion. I will leave this conversation with many questions, which I think is great. For instance, yeah, I live with questions regarding accountability and how your work made me think about how I contribute to some of these processes that regard, like some of the processes that make us like feel indifferent, for instance, about how the products we consume are produced, how we consume natural resources, and how we also are victims of technology in the sense that it homogenizes our identities, and like how we can be more conscious about it and be more accountable, which is something that is great to always like think about, how you can contribute or resist or call on something that you feel it's unfair. I also leave this conversation thinking about the role of emotions in technology and in like social justice issues in general, and how we can use these feelings of injustice or of, yeah, just like unconformity to try to think of new ways of using what we have in our hands and reappropriating technology. And yeah, I also live with this big question about how we can, in a very high technified society, resist or use technology as a way of resistance, and in which ways we can, yeah, like we can feel that this is like something that we can be cautious about also, and like use it knowing that it's also like a very well sustained system that can also be very like overreaching, but we still find a way to resist in a way. So I feel I also like have this big question in my head. But mostly I am very, very grateful for sharing with us all of your work. It's amazing to meet all of you, and it's a privilege for me to have the opportunity to discuss with you and feel that in these times that it's so hard to find inspiration and to like keep on going, because as Amor said, it's very challenging and you're hearing all this bad news and it feels that this is never going to end, like this tragedy. So it's like, thank you for sharing with us what you're doing. I'm sure I'm not the only one that found it inspiring. And yeah, like thank you for like giving us this spark of life in this moment, in this particular context of difficulty, to say it in a very simple way. I don't know if you want to share something with the audience, or if not, just say like a final goodbye.
Sure. I mean, I wanted to say that it's really nice to meet other women artists like this in a show with them, right? Which is great. It's like the best way to meet other artists, women artists. So I hope that happens more and more, especially in this field, which is so male dominant. If I don't know if that's something that you can say. So yeah, to me, it's been an honor being here with you guys and being together in this show that Attractor Studio put together. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you all. It was just so lovely to meet you all, and I'm so impressed. And yes, extremely honored to be in good company. So thank you.
Okay, so I think we can close the space now.
Thank you.
And thank you, Attractor and the United Nations for organizing this important conversation between women artists. That, as Ana Maria says, this was also a privilege. I love being in spaces only with women, so this was great for me. And I hope that all our spectators learned a lot from them and please continue supporting their work and seeing what they are doing. I am very excited to see what your next projects will be. So have a nice evening, night. And yeah, I hope that you are very well.
Thank you, Angélica. You did great.